Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you to all the witnesses for being here today. Especially, I'd like to extend my thanks to Mrs. Deutscher and Mr. Deutscher for meeting with me earlier today and for being here and for sharing and honoring your son's life and story by being here. I want to focus a little bit on the issue of athletes and addiction to help address the increased level of the risk of opioid addiction that student athletes experience. Earlier this year, I co-sponsored the Student and Student Athlete Opioid Misuse Prevention Act. This bill is being led by my friend and colleague, Senator Shaheen, and it would authorize the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, or SAMHSA, and the U.S. Department of Education to grant money to help efforts to educate students and communities about opioid use, abuse, and addiction. In New Hampshire, SAMHSA grants have been an integral part of funding in our state's substance misuse and prevention efforts. So this is really a question to the whole panel. Do you agree that further resources and dedicated funding would help in the work you and others are doing to meet the tough challenges associated with opioid addiction?
Thank you, Senator, for that question. If don't mind if I go first, I just want to agree with Dr. Stern's comments earlier about the importance of support to the NIH to address new knowledge, and that applies also in terms of our understanding of pain and also the understanding of addiction. NIH Director Francis Collins has observed it's amazing when we have millennia of writing about pain as a cardinal sign of inflammation that we know so little about it. But I also want to point out the critical importance of education and using the knowledge that we already have, much of which is implemented through agencies such as the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention and also SAMHSA. So it's, I think, not an either-or when we look at new knowledge versus reacting and acting on the information that we already have, but it really is going to require both to address these issues.
Thank you. Another component of the bill is to provide funding to train state and local officials and coaches and trainers, among others, to recognize and address substance misuse among students. Would this be helpful in your view, and especially maybe Mr. Saylor, you'd like to comment on that?
Yes, the National Athletic Trainers Association is in full support of this bill, and we appreciate that.
All right, thank you. And also to Ms. Williams and Mr. Saylor, although we are starting to have a greater understanding of substance misuse disorders, there is, as we all know, still a lot of stigma attached. And one of the reasons I'm so grateful to Mrs. Deutscher and her family is because when people stand up and talk about their experiences and help us understand it as a disease, it really, really makes a difference. And in my experience in New Hampshire, that's been the thing that's really helped us begin to change the conversation. But I suspect that it may be especially true for athletes who may suffer consequences of being sidelined if they admit to an addiction to opioids or even to acknowledge the injury that underlines their use of prescription pain medications. In your experience, does this stigma and maybe the fear of being sidelined prevent student athletes or professional athletes from acknowledging a dependency on opioids?
I definitely think that the stigma is a problem and something that we need to address. I think the way that we address it is by outreach, educating from the grassroots level all the way up into the professional level, starting the conversation before it becomes a problem, for people that are not using opioids, getting that conversation going, having it frequently instead of just, there's this thing that we probably shouldn't talk about. I think my friend is struggling, but I'm not sure exactly what I should do about it. Before it becomes a problem, we need to implement that as a standard thing that we're doing on a regular basis, and that's a conversation being had.
Thank you. Mr.
Yes, as an athletic trainer, we believe in a comprehensive healthcare system for our athletes, and that includes having access to resources that we can help obtain for them when they are in need of things like addiction treatment and things like that.
Thank you. Thank you all very much for being here. I'll echo what the other senators have said. We could have a hearing on each of the issues that you all have spoken about, and I know we all look forward to continuing to work with you to help make athletics safer.